Andy, Barney, Opie, Aunt B, thanks a lot. We'll see you on our next trip. And you have taken a trip not to Mayberry, but to Corona, California, where the Day Family Classic Car Collection is. We knew about this collection, we did a little research, and boy, did we have a nice surprise. It looked great on the website. We walked through the doors here and just blown away. An amazing collection of cars. Beautiful, beautiful selection. Well, who did all this? Who put it together? Well, Tom and Diane Day did, and we're going to have Tom come on here. Tom, how are you?
Good, Lance. How are you? Nice to have you here.
Well, it's great to be here. How did this all come about?
Well, wife and I started going on auctions, and the grandkids were with us, and they wanted a car or two, so we ended up buying them cars. Started getting bigger and bigger. We enjoyed the auctions. The more we went to auctions, the more cars we bought. So after we had quite a collection, we decided to build a museum. So between the wife and I, we put it together.
All right, and you have the Mayberry Jail Courthouse, you have Floyd's Barber Shop, you have Walt's Gas Station. What's all the Mayberry thing?
My wife is a trivia nut between all the old shows, Lucy, Mayberry. She just loves them.
Well, I think Barney's coming down the way here.
We got Mr. Janowski here.
Yeah, actually, Ed Janowski.
Lance, glad to meet you. How are you?
Very good. And
Welcome
you
to
are
the museum.
thank you. You're the director or curator?
Oh, yes, I am. I'm lucky enough to have this job. So.
And how did you get that lucky? People say I have a good job. You have a good
I was
job.
Tom's neighbor years ago, and I hadn't seen him for a while, and I heard about his collection of cars. I went to see it one day, and it was perfect timing. I asked him, I said, do you need any help? And at that time, he just lost an employee on Friday. I saw him on a Tuesday, and he said, when can you start? And I said, right now. So I got lucky.
So if Ed mysteriously turns up missing, I can have this job in a couple of days?
He's doing a great job, so hopefully he doesn't get missing, but you could have it if he does.
Yeah. See you, Ed.
Oh, boy. I'll have to move to Seattle.
Okay, yeah. Well, you don't have to move to Seattle. You can stay here in Corona, California and take a close look at this incredible collection of cars. So do what I tell you to do every week. Just kick back, relax, and enjoy the show. Ed, you're going to settle something here. Is this a Caribbean or a Caribbean?
It's both. Depends on where you're from.
Okay.
When we do our tours, we say some people pronounce it Caribbean and some people pronounce it Caribbean. So it's whatever you choose.
You were telling me off camera an interesting, sad with a happy ending story about this car. Tell us about that.
Well, when this car was delivered 3 years ago, it came in a 2-car carrier, 2 levels. And as the wife was on top, she was driving the car out. The husband was down below. And somehow, as she got near the end of the ramp, she stopped. And with the Packard, the transmission's a little bit different. And she thought she was going to go to low to pull forward. Instead, she hit farther down to reverse, and she went right off the top.
Ouch.
Luckily, she didn't get hurt. And the damage to the car was about $65,000, and it took a year to repair. But the main thing is that she wasn't hurt. And I imagine they communicated pretty well after that.
Yeah, that's a mistake you don't make twice.
No.
In 1955, Packard was barely limping along, and they came out with this to kind of save the day. Too little, too late. What do you think?
I do. I think it's a beautiful car. The color combinations, a lot of people did not like the tricolor, but as you get used to seeing the car, and I was probably one of the people that didn't like it, I really have come to, it shows a lot of class. And I think at this particular point, I think it was their last ditch effort, and I think it was a little bit too late, but it's a gorgeous piece.
What do you think, who bought this back then?
This was custom made for a doctor. He specially ordered this car, and I think it was for the people who thought they were one step ahead of some of the other people in 1955.
Okay.
It wasn't a 55 Chevy or a Pontiac. It was a Packard, and it had that special name.
55 was the first year of cars, American cars, really starting to get flamboyant, and it went through to 59 or 60. But we have pink. I wonder who thought
Salmon.
Salmon.
Come on, not
Yes.
pink. Yeah.
I wonder who thought tricolor salmon. That was a good idea, and they just went from there. As Chrysler Corporation did that with all their cars.
Well, I think they were looking for something that would set them apart. And if it were just a plain white car with maybe a little black trim, I don't think it would have caught the people's eye. But by putting that strip of salmon in there, I think it's like, whoa, what is that car? And I think that they did the right thing because it is an eye catcher. And like you said, all of a sudden then, from the 50s on, you got the gigantic fins that came through, but this is a car that can stand alone.
And then the dual scoops on the
Dual
hood,
scoops.
that's pretty neat.
It's beautiful.
And we have the Caribbean that we just looked at, or Caribbean, that is very stylish. This is a 48 Packard. Big difference in that 7 years. Wish they all went through that much difference in 7 years. But this is a little bit more stodgy and kind of got the beluga whale thing going.
Exactly. It's a lot shorter and it's a lot wider. And because of that, and with the rounded fenders in the front and the trunk, they did lose a lot of style with this particular car. And you can almost think that it does remind me a little bit of a 48 Mercury or something in a way because of the looks. But this is a 327 V8, very, very nice car for the Packard. Standard shift, and it's got the original interior in it.
All right.
So a very, very clean car.
Well, the comparison to a 48 Ford, it's like they call those fat fenders. I'd call these tubby fenders.
They're about twice as big. Yeah, they definitely are.
This looks like something that you'd see Eisenhower riding in the back of and waving to the crowds on Pennsylvania Avenue.
You see these flags,
Yeah.
It's always in the 4th of July parades, and usually the mayor, some dignitary in town, they like to use the Packard because they have a lot of room in the back. And you're quite right.
Being a little redundant, but again, like I asked on the last one, was this the doctor's car? I mean, at 1948, they were still kind of basking in their earlier glory. What do you think?
Well, I think this was kind of when they were just losing the phase, because once they started to go into the 50s and they got into that boxy style, like I mentioned earlier, you compare this to your 48 Ford, 48 Chevy, this does have a lot of class. Even a 48 Cadillac, it can compare because it does show that it's a little bit unique. So I think that this again was just on the verge of the Packard losing its appeal to people buying a car. So yeah, I think it's a step above myself.
No offense to the 48 Ford owners, but I'll take this one over a 48 Ford.
Yeah, and like I said, it's got a very, very quiet engine, and most of the cars in here really run very well. Wire wheels, it's got little upgrades, so a lot of chrome.
I'm kind of an odd duck. There's a lot of other odd ducks out there, but I love orphan cars. And some people could look at this and say, well, that's just this kind of pudgy, bulbous thing. Why wouldn't you want something more mainstream, more streamlined? What do you think it is about orphan cars that appeal to specific oddballs within the hobby?
Well, I think price at that time was probably a big factor, because this was a little bit more than your normal car, but not a lot. So if you could step it up a little bit, you didn't have to be a doctor to drive it. You could be maybe somebody who was a businessman and wanted to get something special. So even though it's kind of pudgy and everything else, I think it has an appeal that I don't think you saw a lot of them on the road. And I think that it was kind of a different oddball. People look at, like, what is that car when they first came out?
So me liking this type of car now just shows that I was a classy guy in 48.
You were a classy guy? Were you a doctor then?
No, I was the classiest one-year-old in Tacoma, Washington. Yeah. In 1963, I was car shopping, and my stepdad, Bob Bass, went with me, and I found what at first glance was a beautiful red 1954 Pontiac convertible, and I wanted it. Imagine a 16-year-old kid with a 54 Pontiac red convertible, and my stepdad, much to his credit, said, well, just take a second look at that car, and I kind of calmed down. It was a rust bucket, it was a piece of junk, so bless him for doing that. But it still has the same appeal. What a beautiful car this is.
Yeah, it is, and with the fire engine red look to it, it does grab your attention. And this car came from the Harris collection in Reno, and when they started selling off some of the cars, I don't think they've sold all of them off, but Diane and Tom were up in Reno for the auction, and as the car came across the auction block, they looked at each other and said, wow, that is a beautiful car. And so they started looking at it, and then the gentleman driving it, he did something that Diane, after he did this, Diane said, wow, I have to have this car. I'm going to show you. Watch the hood ornament. And here, the light goes on.
Yeah, very cool.
And Diane looked at Tom and she said, I want that car.
Yeah,
and they were probably going to get it anyways, but with that light on there, it made it very special for them.
And that was an option back then. Not everyone had that.
It was an option, and a lot of cars did not have it. It wasn't that expensive back then, but now it is.
When Bucky Knutson took over the decisions at Pontiac, he made a lot of good decisions, but I think he made one bad decision. One of the most distinctive things about these and the earlier models was this waterfall of chrome. I just think that is so cool, and that was one of the first things he said, that's got to go.
Yeah. And that puts it into the category of the Chevys. That looks like, you know, the hood, but this was definitely distinctive. And
you said there's a story about when you brought this here.
Yeah. Well, after Tom and Diane bought this at the Reno auction, they brought it down, and we had an event that weekend. So Tom said, just clean it up and put it inside. So we cleaned it up, put it inside, didn't put the top up. And then about a week later, I was coming through to make sure the top worked. And as I put the top up, I looked all full of holes. And I thought, what's that from? So I went into the back seat, and I looked, and there was mouse poop everywhere. What happened was there was a mouse that came down with the car, and it was eating the top of the convertible top. So we shipped the mouse back to Reno, and we got a new top. Everything's fine.
They thought the canvas was food.
At that particular point, I think that's the only food he had. So.
That brings up a question of the maintenance of all the stuff here. This is quite a fleet to keep up. How do you do that, and who does it?
Well, there are two of us. George Rodriguez, he mainly takes care of the garage, plus we both work together on the polishing and so forth, but he's a master with the buffer, and he's got an extensive background with working with bringing out the luster in a car. So he kind of sets the tone, he gets the color going, and then I maintain. So I won't take a lot of credit for that, but I do have to maintain it, and as I mentioned to you earlier, it's like the Golden Gate Bridge. You start, and then you come back, and then you start again. We have 78 cars in the museum.
Well, we're going to look at another couple of cars, but I want to warn you right now, there is something here that is so spectacular, so special. to my eyes, it's the most desirable car in the collection. But you're going to have to wait a while to see that. But here's a hint. If you like Cadillacs or Studebakers, or you have friends that do, call them up right now and tell them to flip on the TV right away, because they are going to see something very special. This is just about as nice as a truck can be, or it is as nice as a truck can be.
It is as nice. I don't think you can find a truck that's in more perfect condition. This is probably better than what was sold. Everything has been gone through, and the paint job is just spectacular. Runs extremely well, very quiet. When I do start this one, you can't even hear it run. I have to step on the gas to make sure it's running. That's how quiet it is. 1948 GMC. Tell the viewers what's the, I mean, this is a Chevrolet with a lot of gewgaws on it. What's the difference between the 48 Chev pickup and a GMC pickup? Extra chrome. The body styles are pretty much the same. Maybe a different hubcap or a grille, but for the most part, this is a Chevy that they've, like you said, they've glossed up a little bit. Interior's got a little more chrome on it, so it's basically a upgraded Chevrolet.
Okay, so the farmer that had a couple of good years of crops, he would step up to
go on my GMC.
To one of these.
And with this has the bed in the back that you can have the wood planks on it too, and a lot of them just had the metal bed on it. So this, you got the chrome strips with the wood inside, and that's pretty sweet.
A lot of the stuff here is 50s, 60s, muscle cars, typical 50s cars. This one stands out just because it's so different from the rest of them. A 1931 Packard?
That's a 1931 Packard.
Very classy.
And I think Tom and Diane have it in front of the main door so that when your focus comes in, you see this beautiful car sitting right here. And I think it catches your attention as to what's going to be in the museum.
This was back when Packard was really a big deal car.
Yes.
So yeah, just average Joe didn't drive one of these.
Competing with the Duesenbergs and the big old Cadillacs, and you did have to have some money to buy one of these cars. Very luxurious at the time.
How is this to drive? Is it a wrestling match? Or
it's a very hard car to drive, very, very big steering wheel. and the turning radius is fairly small. But if you're going with speed, it's better. But in doing slow turns, it's a tough car to turn. It really is.
I would think the kind of the Great Gatsby type character would be driving this car.
This is a little roadster, a little convertible. As you can see, 2, maybe 3 passengers in the side. And then we have the rumble seat in the back, which was very common for cars in the 30s. And of course, you'd have to make sure you had a good day. Otherwise, if you didn't have a good day, you could be wet or cold.
Yeah, or if you didn't like your mother-in-law.
Have her sit in the back.
Yeah. And the little door on the side. What's that little door
That
for?
little door on the side is for the, it's like a little storage compartment. It doesn't really have a trunk. So you can stuff in there, and technically, that was used for your golf clubs.
That's what I've heard.
And so the guys who had these particular kind of cars, they would probably drive this to the golf course and play some golf. But that was storage, but specifically nice and long.
I told you earlier that something really special was coming up. This is the car, Ed, when I walked in here, and every car here is just incredible, but this one is really incredible. Plus, this is a historic car.
Yes, it is.
An amazing car. Tell us about it.
Well, it's a 1959 Catabaker. And when I do a tour and tell people when we get to this car, it's a 1959 Catabaker, they look at me like, what are you talking about? There is no such car. Well, there isn't. What happened in 1959 is half Cadillac, half Studebaker. Raymond Loewy, the icon for Studebaker, and he had connection with General Motors. He worked at General Motors for quite a while. He went and he said, I want a motor, I want a drivetrain, I want an interior, and I want a top to be Cadillac, and I'll put the rest on. And what you see is Loewy's innovation for the outside. Very, very big. It's got a lot of Studebaker qualities to it, even down to the hubcaps. After he built this is the only one that he built, and he took it to France for 15 years, and he drove around France for 15 years, and then they lost interest in the car, and it kind of was out of sight for a long time. And then he sold it to a neighbor, and it eventually came back to the United States. And when Tom Day bought this car, it did not look like this. And when he saw it at the auction, it was kind of non-completed. He looked at it and he goes, I think that's a pretty special car. So he had enough foresight, and he thought that this was going to be pretty special for him, so he bought it. One of his friends, who is a tremendous auto detailer, and he puts the cars back together, fixed it for him. And it's the only one, and the value, again, depending upon a buyer and a seller, has been somewhere around $1 million because it's so rare.
Easily $1 million, I would think. he did something that was almost blasphemy on this car, and I've seen this car in magazines from when it was built till the recent past in Studebaker publications, but nobody cuts the fins off the back of a 59 Cadillac, and he did. And in the magazines, I wasn't so sure. In the flesh, it looks good.
Yeah,
it looks great.
Yeah, it blends together. He did a couple of things that he wanted to emphasize. It seems like it's got a little wider, the bubble fender-like, with the Studebaker front end on it. The air vents, which are unique, and then the back end has got a very small bumper. The old 59 Cadillacs, per se, used to have a lot of chrome on the front and the back, and he's really made it quite simple. It doesn't have a lot of chrome. He took a lot of the chrome off.
Stock Cadillac motor, or what?
Stock Cadillac. It's a 390, and it runs. It's got about 54,000 original miles, and again, I do drive it. And it's like driving, sitting in your living room, watching television, sitting in your sofa, just sinking in. A beautiful, beautiful ride. It really is.
Does it feel all Cadillac, or do you feel, you know, the ghost of Raymond Loewy and the Studebaker?
I don't feel the Studebaker at all. Okay. It's all Cadillac.
Yeah, as a Studebaker owner, that could be a good thing.
No, it's a beautiful piece. It really is.
Yeah, this is an amazing piece of history sitting here. Ed, thank you very much for allowing us to come into the collection here. This is just amazing.
Well, you were welcome, Lance. And on behalf of Tom and Diane Day, we thank you for showing your viewers this particular museum, because it's a nonprofit organization and not many people get to see it. So your viewers are getting a special treat.
We're very honored. And we're honored that you decided to watch the show. Thank you very much. If you're not watching, we don't have a show. And Ed, I'm going into Floyd's and get a haircut. I'm going to have him give me the same one.
The same one that I have?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, well, tell
right.
Floyd I said hi.
All right, well, thanks a lot. And
it.
thank you for watching. And I'm going in to get my haircut at Floyd's here. So see you next time. Bye-bye.